Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Beyond the South Stand with me, Jez Davies. I'm joined as ever with Morgan Hewitt. Hi Morgan, how are you?
Well, why did you use my full name?
I don't know. I don't know.
I felt like I was at high school.
Yeah, welcome back to Durham High, hey? How are you? All good?
Yes, I'm alright. It's been a bit of a chill day
Yeah.
in Norfolk, but sun's out but cold. But yeah, I'm good, thanks.
And we're joined with our Sunderland fan this week ahead of our game on Tuesday. Wednesday's Tuesday, isn't it?
It's Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah, Tuesday. So absolutely delighted to be joined with Alban. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks, boys. I was hoping you'd try and say my name.
I'm going to give it a go.
Jez.
I'm going to give it a go. Alban Mlinaku.
It's not bad. It's not bad. Mlinaku is the is the pronunciation. But yeah, all good, mate. Thank you. Yeah, you boys all right?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much, and thanks once again for coming on at such short notice as well. So I think perhaps a good place to start, if you could just introduce yourself, where you're from, what you do for a living. I know you know that I know that, but it'd be nice
It sounds like the beginning of the chase.
It's a bit like that sometimes, isn't it? And also perhaps where that beautiful surname comes from as well.
Yeah, no worries. I hope it's not the chase because my general knowledge isn't the greatest. Originally from born and bred Sunderland, and now live in Yorkshire for the past 6-7 years. You can probably tell by my accent I've not lost it.
Yeah.
Some would say that's a blessing, especially when I hear my daughter on a daily basis call me Daddy instead of Daddy. So yeah, I work in HR, human resources, working alongside Jez. And yeah, massive fan of Sunderland, have been all of my life. So right from the days of as the Stadium of Light was getting built, my granddad used to take me to go see it getting built. He used to take pride in telling me that story each day, telling me what was getting took into the stadium and how they were building it. And yeah, he absolutely loved it. So one of those is, I'm sure you two are the same. You don't get a choice when you support your football team. You get thrown a shirt on you and you go through the ups and downs, probably more downs as a Sunderland fan. But yeah, no, there's definitely no choice when it came to who I was supporting. And sorry, the surname is former Yugoslavia, so it's from Kosovo. That's where my dad originates from. So sort of skipped a level when it comes to football team. My dad's a bit of a all-encompassing football fan. Doesn't particularly have a team. Likes to see Sunderland do well, but I think he was a fan of Man United in the Fergie era. But my granddad wouldn't have allowed that. Absolutely no chance from my mum's side. So yeah, he was very, very keen on me supporting them.
Fantastic. Morgan?
Yes.
I think it's time for you to answer the first question of the evening, please, sir.
Okay, no worries. So it's been a bit of a mixed run of form for Sunderland recently. How are you feeling about things at the moment? How are you feeling about how your campaign's going? I mean, you've stormed it recently, but yeah, how what's your take on things?
Yes, I think at the start of the season we were absolutely on fire. We didn't seem to. We just couldn't seem to get beat, which I know is weird to say, but we weren't particularly playing well. We were just grinding out results, which I found it amazing because we just lost Jack Clark to your arch enemies, and it was one of them where you thought, where's this going? Because we didn't actually replace Jack Clark. We just fed in Romain Mundle, who actually played with Jack Clark in the youth team at Tottenham. So it was one of them. It was like, oh, where we're going with this. We also had a young lad in the reserves who's now being snapped up by Brighton, Tommy Watson. So we had potential there, but we didn't know how it would play out. Turns out it played out really well with a whole host of other young and upcoming talents. And then I think, as expected, especially myself, who is, you may find out on this podcast, is a bit of a pessimistic football fan when it comes to Sunderland. It sort of dovetailed, if you like, and we went from being top of the league by a few points to thinking, are we gonna slip out the playoffs at one stage? But form's picked back up, and I think we're now at this stage of the season where it's the same, sorry, as how it started, which is not particularly playing well, but grinding out results. I think Saturday was a bit of a telling one, if you like, because although we won 1-0, the stats in the game would tell you that it was never a 1-0 to Sunderland game, in my opinion. So yeah, I feel like we should get the win on Tuesday, especially with your boys. It looks like you've pretty much slipping away from that playoff.
That's gone.
From that, it's gone. Yeah, well, I did look on Saturday, saw that you were trailing to Plymouth, and one of the other teams were winning around you. I thought it's probably not going to happen. So it's a bit of a funny one Tuesday. I don't know how you boys feel about it, but I think, to be honest, it's two teams that are probably trying to find the motivation to win, because there's not that much to play for, I feel.
Well, I mean, you've got more to play for than Norwich.
Yeah, but I think the point, and Alban, apologies if this isn't the point you're making, I think you guys have already cemented your place in the playoffs, haven't you? And probably won't go any further up or down because of the gap between third and fifth. And then I think likewise after that, well, I think even before the loss against Plymouth, I think we were probably season over. But I kind of think that's just compounded it, losing to bottom of the league that was 7 points adrift, I think. So
yeah, no, you're spot on. I think, again, the optimistic Sunderland fans are saying to themselves, "Oh, can we do it? Can we sneak in?" Especially when Sheffield United have lost and Leeds dropped points. But we had our chance. We had our chance when they were dropping points, and we just couldn't seem to beat teams. We got beat. I think it was off Hull a couple of months ago, and I think we've had a few dodgy draws as well. So yeah, you're spot on. I don't think we're slipping out with the playoffs now. Even the pessimist, such as myself, would say that, and I definitely don't think we're in for the top two either.
No. I mean, you've got to navigate the playoffs as a mentally draining adventure for anyone involved. I mean, the autos are where you want to be placed, right? Like at the end of the day, I know it sounds like a silly thing to say, but the playoffs it's like a gamble. It's a roll of the dice, a hit and hope. You never know what's going to happen. It's some teams, they've got the experience to cope with that kind of pressure cooker, and some don't. I mean, look at Leeds last year when they lost to Southampton in the playoff final. It's a random one, and I think that it's anybody's game when you're in the playoffs, which is kind of why it's exciting, I guess, for a neutral, but not when you're in it yourself.
Yeah, no, it's the greatest thing in the world when you're not a fan of that, and I'm sure you boys would agree. I love even watching League One, League Two playoffs. It's so entertaining. I think it's the best part of football nowadays, especially with the Premier League and what that does in terms of money and maybe taking the fun out of it. I mean, as we've recorded this, I've just watched an absolute drab 0-0 Manchester derby, and trying to see Kevin De Bruyne running about like he's playing in Master League. It was pretty drab affair, and yeah, it's the best part of it. So I'm definitely not looking forward to it as a Sunderland fan who looks like they're going to be in it, but it is a great spectacle. So yeah, you're right. It's just trying to find form, I think, going into the playoffs at this stage for us.
It's the business end of the season. I think if you've picked up form again, you can carry that through into the playoff gamble, I suppose. But yeah, it's good when it goes your way, as me and Jez can attest. But it's so nerve-wracking. So in a way, I'm kind of glad that we're sort of falling away, to be honest, Jez.
No, I agree. So I suppose moving on to the next question, who do you see as the biggest threat to Norwich from a Sunderland point of view, and equally, who are you most worried about from our team?
From the Sunderland side, the best player in our squad without doubt is Enzo Laffy, who we got on a loan from Roma in January.
Yeah.
He's absolutely phenomenal. You saw some of that if you watched the Middlesbrough game. You just need to look at the highlights from that game to see what a talent he is. he has been injured. So he had, I think it was 25 minutes against West Brom on Saturday.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can get some more minutes in the bank on Tuesday and sort of build towards the playoffs. So whether or not he's the threat for Tuesday, I don't know. Outside of that, Mundell, funnily enough, just come back from injury and he had to go off early. So again, he's one that can cause problems. I think the one that I'd say is the biggest one is probably Isidore or Mayenda, who are our two forward players. Absolutely full of pace. Isidore he's one of those players who can't seem to score a tap in. Every single goal is an absolute worldie.
Yeah.
So if he's in the 6-yard box, I'd probably let him have the ball. And if he's 25 yards away on the volley, I'd probably close him down if I was to give any advice to the Norwich City defence. But yeah, I think those two are probably our key players.
Yep.
In terms of a threat to us, I don't know the official stats of this, but I feel like Sargent scores against us every time he plays. I might be wrong, but I think it would be a miss of me to say either him or Borja. Borja Sainz, who is, I think you've got the best forward line in the league, to be honest. I know I think Sargent's been injured, hasn't he? And Borja couldn't keep his mouth closed in the fixture against us previously. He got a lengthy ban, didn't he, for that? I think he started, was it Mepham? So so either one of them two, I think, is definitely a threat against us. And I do like I might get the pronunciation wrong, but is it Marcondes, the midfielder?
Yeah, good player.
Yeah. I can't think of where I've seen him. It must have just been a random.
He was at, was he Bournemouth, Jez?
Bournemouth and Brentford, I believe.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I was looking at it. I can't remember him playing in the fixture against us at home, but I think I've seen him a few times. It might have been for you boys, and he was brilliant. He was really, really good on the ball. It seemed to be one of those players who can easily split a midfield or split a defence. So I think he's one to watch out for as well for our midfield, who at times can be a little bit suspect, a little bit ropey. I'm not the biggest fan.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Morgan, would you agree with that, or would you sort of chuck any other players into the mix from either side?
I mean, after yesterday, you can probably hear in my voice, I'm fairly deflated about the rest of this season. I can't really see us getting anything out of Tuesday, if I'm honest. I mean, you're right, Alban, in terms of Saints and Sargent. They're usually good for goals, and Marcondes is, he's a bit experienced, and you can usually kind of rely on him to kind of press from the top, a bit like Stiepermann when we had Stiepermann back in the day.
Yeah.
But we may as well have a chocolate fondant as our midfield and defence. So you'll walk through it. I guess there's no other way of painting it, to be honest, Jez. I'm really sorry, but at this point in time, I've given up hope with that centre part of our defence.
Yeah. Okay.
Terrible.
I think I'll ask a few questions, sort of follow-up questions off the back of that. Then, is Joe Bellingham still at Sunderland?
Job is, yeah. He's, I wouldn't have said a threat just because of the attacking quality we do have. But yeah, Job is here, and he's carbon copy of his brother, which I sometimes don't like to say. If I'm being honest, I get a bit annoyed at the commentary, especially on Sky Sports, where I think even one called him Jude by accident. They've got him that ingrained in their head, and I think Job's actually took the decision to just refer to himself as Job.
Right.
Probably doesn't want that pressure of being his brother's shadow, if you like,
Cool.
because he's his own player, but he is, as a player, quite a carbon copy. So he picks up the ball from outside of our own box, and he can just run with it. Such a talent. He just seems to glide across the pitch. And I think if we don't get promoted, he'd be one of the first ones that I would say will have interest. And he did have interest, I believe, in January. Funnily enough, Dortmund, which I know Jude Bellingham went to from Birmingham. So yeah, he's a threat.
Yeah, and you think he'll go on and perhaps not be as good as his brother, but maybe not far off.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I'm one of those fans who doesn't look at their own player and think that they're the best thing ever. I'm sort of quite balanced with it. So on the flip side, we've got Chris Rigg, who everyone seems to be talking about, local lad. He's actually from a Newcastle family, which is unfortunate for him, but he's, a talent, don't get me wrong, but when we're talking about, I was going to say when we're talking about Man United, he probably could get in the Man United team, but when we're talking about, real quality Premier League, I just don't think he's there. Maybe in a good few years. I think Bellingham's not far off. I really, really do. Just because of his attributes, but also his physicality. But for his age, he's got probably another year or two growth in him, and I think taking that into account, I think definitely Premier League standard at some point. With no doubt about whether or not it's us. I hope so, but if not, I think it'll be somewhere else.
No, great, and I think the just one for us is Antti Shinak, who's part of that sort of trilogy up front alongside Signs and Sargent, and he's shown glimpses this season of a real promising talent, I guess is the best way of putting it. Because I think he scored something like 7 or 8 goals for us this year. And so I think, I'm with Morgan a little bit in the sense that I've kind of written this season off, but I think players, using the next 6 or the last 6 games to develop or, aid the development of these players is only going to be a benefit.
Yeah, 100%. It's time for experimentation now, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yeah, and I think as long as we don't flog him to Dortmund, which was the rumour at the start of the week, we'll see what happens. But I think I'll hand over to Mr. Happy Morgan for question 3.
Mr. Happy? No, no, it's just a bit crap, isn't it? I'm really sorry, Alban. You're bearing the brunt. Usually, I'm really upbeat. It's
you
just,
are.
I think sometimes it just kind of gets you get a bit tired of it, and I'm just having one of those days. So there's been a few players over the years who have worn both yellow and green and the red and white. Any standouts that Sunderland fans still talk about positively or otherwise?
So I think if you were to ask all Sunderland fans, the standout one would probably be Alex Pritchard.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a recent thing as well. He hasn't long left us. I think he was instrumental to us getting promoted from League One. And whilst that may not seem a huge achievement, we spent 4 seasons in there, and I just didn't see us getting out of it at one point. And we actually only, I think it's another ex-Canary who took over us, Alex Neil. He was pretty instrumental in it as well. So yeah, Pritchard's definitely one. Patrick Roberts as well. I don't know how many games he played for you boys, but he's been, it's probably his worst season to date this year. He's seems to almost, you can predict what he's going to do. He's going to cut inside, he's going to try and shoot, or he's going to try and find a pass, and it's just not coming off for some reason this season. Again, coming into a little bit of form, I think, lately, but I absolutely love Patrick Roberts in the last couple of seasons, and probably Barley Mumba as well. He's a local lad. He's very, very well liked in Sunderland. I think he still gets up to some games. I believe his family's Sunderland fans. So yeah, he's a good one. On the flip side, I would say Lewis Grabban.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say Lewis Grabban.
It's probably one that we don't. He wouldn't get around bought from in Sunderland, I don't think. Put it that way. He was part of the Netflix documentary where I think he was crying to the cameras that he wanted to leave us. And look, I think you could probably understand some of that, because he joined us thinking that he'd be in a title race to get back to the Premier League, and he ended up in a relegation battle. I think he ended up cutting his loan spell short in January. Couldn't even tell you where he went and what he done, which probably tells its own story, in fairness. But I think that was the final nail in our coffin to then get relegated to League One. So yeah, he's definitely in there. I personally can't stand James Vaughan. I don't have a big reason for it. I think he was in that, he came in the same window, I think, as Grabban actually. And whilst he had I think he still thought that he was that kid who scored on his debut for Everton, the way that he ran about, but he couldn't seem to hit the back of the net. Really, really bad signs. So they're definitely on the flip side, the two who I think Sunderland fans would say are fairly disliked.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I loved the that documentary, the first season, because it was just really fascinating to watch, and I like. It's hard to say this because obviously it's you know, it's like watching car crash, and it was just so entertaining to kind of almost see just how things were so badly handled that and I don't want to take pleasure in your Sunderland's demise at that point, but it was just really entertaining viewing, and I think that Grabban, like you said, was a feature of that. But equally, there was that other player, and I thought about him today. He's the Welsh player, the Welsh midfielder you had.
Oh, Johnny Williams.
Yeah, how his kind of mental health struggles were kind of documented in that show. Like when a player is injured, and how they're kind of like, a lot of fans don't, he's a sick note. And nowadays I'm like, you know what? Like, what player wants to get injured? Like, what player chooses to get injured to then have to go through this uncertainty of actually being able to get back into the starting 11? I think that was a really, really insightful and interesting kind of view into like players' psyche.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the podcast was even an eye opener for myself. I mean, I think it came out probably 12 to 18 months after that season had finished, and I still was, my jaw was on the floor with some of the things that I seen, and the famous clip from Martin Bain reading Ibrahimovic off a list of potential signings for us, and it was just an absolute, like you say, car crash. And I think the only thing that did come of that is that other fans were able to see, but probably resonate as well, the ups and downs of it. And it's not all rosy. And yes, there are teams outside of the Premier League top six, and more often than not, those teams are going through those times. So we've definitely shared some of those times. I think looking back, the funniest part of that is knowing that documentary was actually filmed to try and see us rise from the ashes and get promoted back to the Premier League, and they ended up getting an even better series out of it by us getting relegated again. So good for some viewers, but not for Sunderland fans.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely demonstrated the passion and the love for the club and the community in the area, completely juxtaposed to how the infrastructure and how the top brass handled things. And I think that's when you see when a business is a business and it can alienate, the community that effectively brought the club up. And I know this is a bit deep, but this is what happens on this podcast, Alban. We end up having these kind of like sociological, like political chats from nowhere. Yeah. But I was keen to get your take on it, because I mean, I've not had a conversation with a Mackham about the documentary before, so I just think it was just really interesting viewing, really.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I would say about Sunderland fans in general, and I think that came across in the documentary talking to other football fans, is Sunderland Football Club is the city. So it is a very poor part of the country. One of the poorest, and I think what other fans maybe in, like, say, London or elsewhere, is that they don't take into account that is all a lot of fans have got. They work Monday to Friday to get out the house from under the wife's feet on a Saturday, meet up with their friends, meet up with family, and go to the football, and that's all they have. And sometimes, certainly for me, less so now I've got kids, but that result on a Saturday did determine how you were feeling on a Monday. And seeing owners and managers and players come in, I mean, I could name a whole load of those who have come in and just not represented those values. If you look at Jack Rodwells of the world, and you know, more and more, even after that, going back a bit further, and players seem to come to us when they wanted that final paycheck, and to try and cash out. But that's not Sunderland. We are sometimes, frustratingly, as a Sunderland fan, one of those clubs who, if you give your all and you give 100%, and I know it's a cliche, but I think it's even more the fact in Sunderland Football Club, you'll get your applause, you'll get your probably your statue. I mean, we've got a statue of Bob Stoker, who won a cup in 1973, and not much else. So that paints a story of just what it means to us when we do get a little bit of success. So, like I say, that documentary was watching it through my fingers at times, but I think it did hit a note with a lot of fans, and like I say, it probably resonated with some as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're a very heavily community focused club, Norwich, and I think that I can understand just how painful that whole experience was. I mean, Norwich have been in League One. Obviously, we haven't double dipped like Sunderland, but I think when the club means so much to the community and does so much for the community, to go through those challenging times, it is painful, but it also hopefully will bring the community together. Although we are quite negative in Norfolk, has to be said.
Can be.
I'm just on that tip today, that's all. I'm fine, okay.
Morgan, I think you had a question relating to the club nickname, didn't you?
Yes, please. So why, I'm fairly certain I know the answer, but why is supporters called Mackems? Why are you called Mackems?
So it dates back to the shipyard building days. So we think we got nicknamed by Newcastle, people from Newcastle actually, that we instead of make, we say mac in Sunderland. So it was we mac 'em and we tack 'em. Yeah. So I think we got the nickname essentially. I think we're essentially being called thieves by those mob up the road. So yeah, I believe that's where it came from. If you say the answer, I hope you don't correct me. But I believe it's because of that. Yeah, back to the shipbuilding days.
I thought so. I used to work with a guy who's a Geordie, and he said that the reason why they're called Mackems is because he used to make the ships, and then they would take the ships and fix them. So you'd mack them, and they'd tack them and fix them. That's what.
Okay. Well, maybe it's a bit of both. That story's a lot better for Sunderland fans, in fairness. I'd rather us be bad at our jobs than thieves. So yeah, I'll say that one in future if I get asked. But when I asked my granddad way back in the day, that was the answer that I got. But I'll adopt that one as well.
Yeah, I mean, we just had canaries basically that were pets.
Well, we've got the.
As simple as that.
We're called the Black Cats, and nobody refers to themselves in Sunderland as a Black Cat fan or anything like that. It's such a strange one. I know this for a fact that we actually voted for it, I believe, as fans. So way back in the day when newspapers were still a lot more important than they are now with social media, there was a vote done in the local paper, and I believe it must have the Black Cats won the vote. So I don't quite know what the other options were for that to win, but I believe that's why we're nicknamed the Black Cats. So we've got two that run about pre-game called Samson and Delilah. Yeah, so good for the kids, but it's not a relevant nickname, I don't think, at all.
The only relation that I know to the Black Cat is the Black Cat roundabout on the A1M, which is I don't know if you've ever drove down to Westfield, Alban, but you probably would have drove past the Black Cat roundabout a few times.
All right, yeah. Well, yeah, that's probably the only relevance, and it's about what 300 miles away from
Yeah,
Liverpool.
that's it.
So
Yeah, 300 miles
Yeah,
down the A1.
Jez loves
yeah,
a highway, don't you, mate?
I could go on. We could do a whole podcast on
That's not.
the inner workings of the M25 and telling you about what's the biggest tunnel in the M25.
I don't know.
Well, maybe we'll save that for another one.
Yeah, let's save it for a juicier time. I don't like Christmas special or something.
Yeah, 100%. Or maybe Easter. Who knows? Alban, so before we get stuck talking about the national highways, what's the general feeling amongst your fans about the the direction the club's going in and the leadership, and are they still backing the board and recruitment strategy?
I think there's a slight division with fans, and the first part of that will probably be the strongest feeling, which is the fans see what the owners and the sporting director Christian Speakman are trying to do. So going back to the Ellis Short days, which was his final season was our the first Netflix season. So he's backed us for about 10 years. We were spending all sorts of money, but giving it to the wrong people. So we ended up getting relegated, and then after that having two, I would call them crooks, if I'm being honest, with Charlie Methven and Stuart Donald. They'll have featured in the Netflix documentary if you watch season 2.
Yeah.
They were, again,
I remember those guys. Yeah.
they were sort of the opposite of Ellis Short. They had no money, but weren't very good either. So Ellis Short had all the money and wasn't very good. They seemed to have no money. I mean, a lot more money than me, but not in football owners terms. Put it that way.
One of them guys that would toss their jumper over their shoulders. That the kind of dude they was.
Yeah. That was Charlie Methven. So he was also quoted at one of the fans' forums saying, I believe it was something along the lines of, Northerners aren't as clever as Southerners or something like that, which, is exactly what you want to say in a northeast pub in Sunderland when you're talking to football fans. So he was, he was a character in the Netflix documentary. I think his standout moments was when he was trying to test the speakers, trying to play sort of house music through them, which was always a delight when in the early days of their tenure, when you'd turn up and you'd think that you were at a rave as opposed to a football match. I think he was also shouting at some staff. So yeah, a delightful bloke, and I believe he's darkened the door of Charlton fans now. So I don't know how they feel about him, but certainly not my cup of tea. So I think on the back of those bad experiences, we've then had Lewis Dreyfus come in, who was actually a part owner at the time of Methven and Stuart Donald being in control, and then ended up buying the whole club. So after that, you've had Speakman come in, and the model's quite clear. It's to buy young, sometimes British, sometimes foreign talent, develop them, get them straight into the team. There's no feeding them through. There's no sort of trying to mix it in with mature, experienced players. I think our most experienced players, late 20s. The rest seem to be I was going to say about the same age as my daughter, who's 6, but it doesn't seem that far away from them. They're teenagers, a lot of them. They're absolute babies in the grand scheme of things, and it is quite incredible to say that we're sitting 4th in the league, which is a notorious, tough division when you're playing Saturday, Tuesday, and it's remarkable of them. So I think that the structure's clear. I think we're in a real crunch period now, where if we don't go up, we're in our first couple windows where we'll have serious eyes on some of our talent, and it's all about A, do we keep them, and if we do let them go, who are we going to bring in? Are we going to replace them with anyone of note? Or are we going to go back to that sort of young up and coming talent? So I think that's the general feeling. I did tell you I was a pessimist, so my feeling's slightly different. I do think there's a lot of questions to be asked. So the the owner was majorly at fault for when we played Newcastle in the FA Cup a couple of seasons, I think it was last season, and decided to let them into the corporate box areas
Right.
and fully decorate it full of Newcastle and
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
anti Sunderland slogans. So because of the FA Cup rules, you've got to give the away club a certain amount of fans, which meant that they then went into the lower bowl of our stadium and were able to have that area. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was an absolute. I mean, it was a PR disaster. I actually
Yeah.
didn't think it was that bad in the grand scheme of things, but the optics were terrible, and the fact that him or who he effectively hires didn't spot that and see that was a really, really bad thing. I also think our signings, while some have been good, what you will get on the flip side is a lot of bad signings, and I understand that's the same for every club. My real bugbear with us in the last few windows seems to be that we just sign injured players. We
We know that one.
yeah, we've signed a guy who was supposed to be a bit of a midfield maestro, Samad, and he's only just come back and he's back injured again. I think he's played about 1 or 2 games. I'd hate to know how much we're paying him to sit on the bench, and I appreciate back to one of your points around, injured players don't want to be injured, but I also don't want our football club to sign these injured players if they're coming in quite clearly injured. So he's just one on a long list that we seem to do, and we don't seem to have a great depth either.
Yeah,
so,
that sounds familiar.
Yeah. So and again, I'm probably preaching to the choir with yourselves and other football fans from other clubs who listen, but we. I am one of those fans who do think, maybe wrongly, that we are a big club in size, in the terms of our size and of our fan base, and I just think we should be at some point trying to push on a bit more.
Yeah.
And I just don't think our owners have either got the cash for it, or they might just not want to do it that way. So that's, I think, again, I'm in the minority of fans who think the latter of that, but I would say overall it's positive.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think, Morgan, just from a Norwich point of view, perhaps you can, draw the similarities that I've got in my head already and, maybe put your own spin on it a little bit as well.
What I think.
What you think of it? Well, of our situation where, I think I think Alban's raised a few very sort of valid points there, and actually some of the things that he resonate with us. I think when we talk about Jurasek that we signed in January, he's played 20 minutes, signing for 6 million. He's been out injured twice already, and it's you got players like that. But I think the biggest thing with Norwich this season, guys, is the consistency. I think we've had some really good results, like beating Watford 4-0, beating Plymouth 6-2, I think it was, but then equally we've had some real stinkers where like yesterday being a classic example, and I think that's where we've really struggled this year. Injuries as well, just absolutely decimated us. I think I just think we're doing the same of investing in those younger players. Not many of them have been from the UK though, right, Morgan?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think we're in a position where we have we brought in young talent, but it's taking time to gel, and these players have got to get settled in a new country and learn a style of football that potentially they haven't sort of played before. We've also been bought out completely now by, well, not, is it completely? I can't remember, but we've got
90%, isn't it? Just under 90%, yeah.
We've got a new owner, and it's it's going to take time. It doesn't take the sting out of yesterday. Obviously, like, people want to be entertained and don't want to. You don't want to be losing to the bottom. All respect to Plymouth, but you don't want to be losing to the club at the bottom of the table. So yeah, I think it's just it's tough. They've got to try to get the fans back on board, the impatient ones back on board, and I'm sure, Alban, you can understand where I'm coming from. That there are times it's just like you're sort of pulling your hair out, trying to maintain this level of patience.
Yeah, definitely. And in fairness, I would put Norwich up there with Sunderland, and I know football doesn't work like this, but as one of those teams who should be at least challenging up the upper league, up the upper division of the Championship, and potentially in the Premier League. When you look at some of the clubs that are in there at the moment, they're not in there because they've got, a real big fan base, and a real big following. They're in there because they've got right people at the right time who have done their utmost to keep them in the division. And I'm sorry to call some of them out, but I'm looking at the Bournemouths, the Fulhams, and
Yeah.
I think some of these are geographically rich in the fact that I appreciate that players probably want to play in West London of Fulham than they do in Sunderland. It's just the reality of the situation. But I do think it can be quite frustrating at the same time when, for example, I think we were a few points off the top two in January, and you're just thinking to yourself, please, just a bit of cash influx, a few players here and there, and we can really challenge. I mean, we lost Ross Stewart to Southampton good few windows ago,
Yeah.
and we just haven't seemed to have signed that player. Isidore's come in, and I think, to be honest, we've struck lucky in the fact that he came in as a bit of a winger, or an inside forward who has turned out to be a real good striker in terms of his goal input. He gets likened a little bit to Henry back in the day, when he came in, and I think Arsenal fans thought he was a winger and he turned out to be a forward. I mean, that's not me saying he's Henry by any stretch, by the way. It's just the only comparison I think fans can relate to, and I think we struck lucky there, but we haven't actually tried to go out and sign that striker. And I'm not saying go out and spend 5-6 million, because as you guys have just said, sometimes that can lead to wasted money when they're sitting in the physio room. But it's still frustrating that we seem to be letting go of these players like your Jack Clarks, like your Ross Stewart, and it seems to be keeping the lights on as opposed to pushing us and helping us go forward. So yeah, definitely resonate with you guys there.
It's not really helped Southampton though, has it? Because as this goes out, they would have been relegated back to the Championship under record-breaking season for them in that sense. I mean, I think like I posted something on our we have a forum, a Norwich forum called the Pinkin, and I posted something today saying, it could be worse, because I you know what, like I wouldn't, and this is all due respect to any Southampton fans that decide to listen to this, which they probably won't, but it could be worse, right?
Yeah. And sometimes that's the danger, I am one of those fans who will always want more and to push forward, as opposed to, trying to fight relegation or trying to just be in a playoff battle. But you're totally right. I mean, the three teams who went up last season have been absolutely horrendous, to put it quite bluntly this season in the Premier League. And to be honest, I think it'll be the same next season. I think that's the way that the English leagues are going at the moment.
Well, I mean, I had the same conversation with some friends yesterday, I think, with regards to Ipswich. They spent 150 million on Watt, put a lot of money behind McKenna, who is not a proven Premier League manager, obviously, by any stretch. And then, Leicester with Van Nistelrooy, and then relying on Jamie Vardy still. And then Southampton go up with Russell Martin, ex-Var Parish, with an almost like an idealistic kind of possession-based football, which we know when we had Farke does not work and does not translate to the Premier League. So I think, in a way, there is something to be said, Alban, with what you've said, but equally I think those three clubs haven't been the brightest.
No, definitely not. And look, that's probably my biggest worry if we do end up kicking on and having a good sort of playoffs and potentially going up, is that we're definitely not set up next season for it. And I think, like say Sheffield United, Burnley, I don't think they particularly are either. I think major funds would have to be put in, and that's the that's probably the worry now, is that any teams who do go up are in that spot where they're just trying to fight, and when they do come down, they're all right because they get the parachute payments and off back up they go. So yeah, I do see that side as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Just before we move on to our last question, which will just be a score prediction, as we've talked about the majority of it already, are you two aware of the Friendship Trophy?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
I am. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's something that obviously, you know, it's a bit of folklore between Norwich and Sunderland fans, isn't it? And I think I was just reading about it now. I didn't realise it was on an aggregate score. I just thought whoever won that game, you know, took home the trophy. But it's I'm just reading about it now. I'm just seeing who the current so the current holders are Sunderland.
You're welcome to it, Alban.
well, I'd rather be holders to the actual game that it was factored around, which I believe was the League Cup final, wasn't it?
85.
Cup,
yeah.
Yeah, the World Cup. So I'd rather have that. I'd rather have that than the Friendship one. But yeah, we'll take any silverware.
The most significant cup meeting after the 85 final was the semi-final of the 1991-92 FA Cup at Hillsborough, which Sunderland won 1-0. There you go.
Nice.
TalkSport named the Friendship Trophy one of football's most pointless awards. Thanks, TalkSport.
What do they know?
Yeah, I guess. Okay.
They sacked Tommy Boyd. What do they know?
Yeah, true. This is very true. I think we'd have a little prediction, and then Alban, we've got a little surprise for you at the end. Morgan does a random question of the week, and it's brilliant. So,
you flatterer, Jez.
So perhaps I don't know, Alban, if you'd like to go first with your score prediction, please.
I think you're saying, what's your score prediction going to be?
I think the optimist in me wants to say I don't think we'll get a big scoring game by either of us. And I know games can go like that, but with both. But I don't think it will be on Tuesday. I think we're just not in that frame where we can score a lot of goals at the moment. So I think it'll be a close one, and I will go with 1-0 Sunderland.
Okay, Morgan.
I'll say 2-1 Sunderland.
Okay. I'm going to go for 2-0.
Okay.
And that's about as optimistic as I can be, I'm afraid, Norwich fans.
Yeah. I don't think any Norwich fans will probably listen to this one.
Yeah, we'll see. But, so, Morgan.
Yeah.
It's time. It is time. Hope you're sitting down, Alban.
I am now.
Random question of the week. There you go. So, as we know, you called a...
Here we go.
you called Mac. So, if you could create a burger from a well-known burger chain called the Big Mac'em.
Oh my God.
What would the burger include? And you can put anything if you want, like Haribo, doesn't matter. Go wild.
Oh, well, I think we'd have to. The main ingredient, all Sunderland fans will agree, will be cheesy chips. They've got to be in there somewhere. So I bet you didn't expect that one.
No,
so we are apparently well known for our cheesy chips in Sunderland. Last time we got to Wembley, we were singing cheesy chips on Wembley Way. So the cheesy chips will be in there definitely. I think I'll go for the regular bun and burger, and maybe a little drizzle of chili sauce as well.
Oh, nice.
What about you, Jez?
Well, so I would say, regular bun, regular burger. Probably it would look like a Big Mac, so it would have the two burgers with the little bit of pointless bread that's in the middle of it.
It's pointless.
Just before I answer, guys, how do you eat your Big Macs?
Just like a normal, regular burger.
Right.
I try not to allow anything spilling from the back.
I mean, they put a ridiculous amount of lettuce in it, first and foremost, but I'm I was probably going to sound quite weird by saying this, but I eat it layer by layer.
Ooh,
Oh, wow.
that's weird. That is weird. I don't know if I'm going to do this podcast anymore with you.
Anyway, what would I put in the burger? I would put a egg, a bit of black pudding,
Yeah.
and some onions, I'd say, cooked onions, and a bit of brown sauce.
Nice. So basically, you're having like a breakfast burger.
Yeah, I suppose it is breakfasty, isn't it?
Yeah.
It? Yeah.
Your Big Mac'em.
What's Big Mac'em? What would be in your burger, Morgan?
So it's just really dark. Given you're called the Black Cats, I'd have normal bun, brioche. No, actually brioche, because I like a bit of sweet. Some shredded lettuce.
Yeah.
Some salsa.
Yeah.
A bit of slice of avocado.
Yeah.
The main filling would be a black cat.
Well, as you said that, my cat walked towards me, so I'm going to shoo her away just in case.
I think the worst part of that burger is probably the avocado. You're not getting avocado in Sunderland. Not a chance.
They not grow there. They grow there. They grow in Norfolk. There's avocado trees here. There isn't. But yes, so that would be mine. I think.
Thanks, Morgan. I think that's really put the cherry on top of the icing of this episode. So it's been great, Alban. Thank you once again. Thank you so much for coming on at such short notice, and particularly Sunday before Monday. We're going to have quite a busy week this week, aren't we? At Gravity Towers.
Yeah, definitely. No problems at all, boys. I've enjoyed it. It's been nice to hear fans who are a bit less fortunate than ourselves, which I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing in a negative way, but it's I felt where you guys are. So yeah, it's been brilliant, and I do have a glimmer of hope that you guys can maybe push on a little bit this season. And if we do remain in the league, then at least we'll be there with you guys and other such like teams who who are great clubs. It's a brilliant league, so it's not a bad place to be in.
No, you're not getting hiding every week, and hopefully one day we'll be able to play the Friendship Cup out in the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely. Alban, anyone you want to say hello to before we finish?
Yeah, so some of the lads went to West Brom on Saturday. So Chris Burt, Andrew Davies, also known as Ginge, big shout out to them too, who were there and given Sunderland a massive push on to win the game. So them too. The rest they'll not get the shout out because they didn't go.
Fair enough. Morgan, anyone you want to give a shout out to?
What? No. Why? Why are you asking me that question?
Well, I've got a few people I want to give a shout out to.
It's not the Beyond the Barclay episode.
No, it's not. But I do have a few people that I want to give a shout out to. The 1,100 Norwich fans that went down to Plymouth and watched that abject especially first half. But fair play to every single one of them, and thank you for your continued support of our football club.
And if you're listening to this, thanks for that as well.
Yeah. Look, we're going to finish there. So thanks everyone for listening. My name's Jez Davies.
I've been Jez Davies.
That's it for this episode of Beyond the Barclay. Thanks so much for listening. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave a review if you enjoyed the show. You can also catch all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you've got any questions, stories, or topics you'd like us to cover, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, on the ball, City.